this year. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessie and I am so excited, clearly, because we are talking about the best books that I have read for 2022. Also, my last video that I did should be the top 10 worst books that I've read this year. So if you're interested in both the good and the bad, make sure you check out both videos. We will be starting at number 10, working our way up to my top favorite, which probably won't be a surprise to anyone, but you never know. All of these books are 5-star reads, except one. And there are other 5-star reads that I read this year that did not make this list. But one of the 4-star reads snuck in. So, and it's not number 10 as well. That's the shocking part. Also, out of the 10 books, 5 of them are romance, 5 of them are mystery thrillers. So I felt like that was kind of interesting about my reading taste this year. So yeah. All right, the first book I want to talk about is actually my most recent 5-star read, and also as of right now of me filming this, it's my most recent finished book that I read. It's kind of surprising because I honestly did not think I was going to like this book, and I actually put it off as something I would never read until I talked to Gwen. While I was visiting Gwen, we actually talked about one of her recent reads, which is A History of Wild Places by Shea Earnshaw. And she actually told me everything about this book, even the spoiler, the ending, everything. And at the end of our conversation, I was like, wow, that actually sounds like a good book. So you know what I did? I went to the library and checked it out, and I read it, and I still gave it 5 stars even though I knew the plot twist. This one is so good because I feel like when it first came out, people were saying like, oh, it's like a mystery with fantasy, and I was just like, ew, no fantasy for me. But it's really not that fantasy. Like, there is like one element, but it's really, it does not make it seem fantasy, in my opinion. I would say this is definitely a mystery thriller, more on the mystery, and it reminds me of like one of my favorite movies, like when I was like back as a teenager. And I won't tell you the movie because I feel like that would kind of spoil the book, but I feel like this is definitely worth the read. If you were ever like on the fence, definitely pick it up. It's definitely atmospheric. People said it's slow. I didn't really think it was that slow, to be honest. So I personally really loved it, and definitely check out the audiobook because it has different narrators and things like that. So yeah, top 10, very shocking to make this list, to be honest. Number 9 is actually the most shocking in my opinion because it is that 4-star read for me. And I've read another book by the same author that just came out this year, and that book was a 5-star read, but it did not make this list. So this one's kind of weird to explain. I also feel like this book got a lot of hate when it first came out, but it is The Chain by Adrienne McKinney. This book is so fast paced. Like, it's definitely one of those books that even though I gave it a 4-star, I constantly think about this book. It is so good. It has such a unique premise. It's about a child getting abducted, and her mother gets this phone call saying, in order to get your kid back, you have to kidnap another kid and call their parents and basically say they have to pick up a kid. Until they pick up a kid, you won't get your kid back. So it creates the chain, and it is so wild and crazy. But I know when this book first came out, people were saying it was not good. The first half was amazing, the second half was not as good. I can respect that because I can definitely tell where people stopped liking the book. The second half is very different. It definitely slows down the whole book, but it's still interesting to where I loved it, and it made obviously number 9 on my top 10. I still like this book, again, because I think about it, I'm recommending it a lot more, I'm forming my own opinion versus listening to everyone else. So do yourself a favor, form your own opinion, and pick up this book. The next book I want to talk about is one that I constantly think about throughout the year, but it is The Pact by Jodi Picoult. This is my first book by this author. This one is definitely a more chunkier book. It's different because it's not just a mystery thriller. It's more of like family drama, lawsuit, or legal thriller. I don't know how to describe it. It's such a weird, interesting I think it's a genre of a bunch of subgenres, to be honest. This one follows the Golds and the Harts, which are two families. They are best friends. Both of the married couples are best friends, and they both have, one has a son, one has a daughter. The kids grew up being friends. Then when they became teenagers, they started having feelings for each other, and they just always knew that their kids were going to wind up together. Something happens where both families get a call in the night saying that one of their kids, like basically their kids are in trouble. So they rush to the hospital, and not to kind of like spoil too much because it's very early on into the book, one is dead, one is injured. So now as you read the book, was it murder? Was it suicide? Because the one that survived says it was a suicide pact. But there's a lot of evidence that make it look like that child tried to commit murder. So the reason why this one made it on the list, the entire time I'd be like, oh, it was totally murder. Oh, it was definitely suicide. And you get perspectives of both the lawyer, you get perspectives of the families, you get perspectives of the deceased and the suspect. It's a wild ride. And by the end, you're like, just give me the answers. So because the book can get that kind of a rise out of me, that's why it's number 8 on my top 10. The next one is kind of no surprise, but also I feel like some people won't like this choice as my number 7, but I really enjoyed it. And if you want to see more clips of me enjoying it, I did a whole reading vlog while I was at the beach, and I believe this one was in 2 of those videos, but it is Every Summer After by Carly Fortin. This one, if you like Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, you're going to love this one. If you didn't, you may not like that one. So just know that going in, because it's very, very similar. This one, I was originally going to give a 4, 4.5, but the more I kept thinking about it after reading it, it eventually made it to a 5-star read, because I just enjoyed every single moment of this one. And again, getting into romance, this one was one of those books where I was like, I don't know, I feel like I'm being super harsh and nitpicky, but I finally had to have a conversation with myself and be like, you enjoyed this book a lot, give it 5 stars. Don't feel guilty for giving a book 5 stars. So you know what, YOLO, I don't feel bad for giving this one 5 stars. This one follows Persephone, and basically every summer her and her family go to this lake house, and next door to the lake house is another kid her same age, and basically from the age of like 12, I think, all the way up until they're adults, they basically have every summer together. And then in another timeline, you're following Persephone as an adult, and basically she gets a call saying something has happened to where she has to go back to this town. Basically she swore she would never go back to this town because of something that happened between her and Sam, and something has happened and now she has to go back. So you follow the present timeline as well as the past timeline. I wasn't a big fan of the past timeline, but the more I kept diving into it, I was like, I don't really want to listen to the present timeline. I want to know what happened that made these two individuals like do what they did. So I'm very, very happy to have read and loved this one. I'm really looking forward to the author's second book that's coming out this summer. So yeah. Number 6 is actually a book that I don't own because I read it from the library, and this one was so interesting to read. But it is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, and I learned early on this year that I do not like cult books, but this one was weird and different and interesting to where I did like it. It is very graphic, so if you plan on reading this one, make sure you look up trigger warnings, because there is a lot of trigger warnings in this one. But this one was just so entertaining, and like, I don't know, like the best way I can describe it, it was very seductive in a way, to where it definitely draws you into the story, to where you're like, what is happening? What am I reading? Where is this story going to? So I really enjoyed it. This one follows a woman where when she was in college, she had some roommates who were kind of sort of in like this like sex cult in a way. It's the best way I can describe it. I don't even know like what the technical term is, but they ended up escaping, and something happened to where she gets a call saying that one of her friends returned back to the college and committed suicide or was murdered. It's very unclear. So she actually calls another friend who has a true crime podcast. They kind of go back and discover. So you're getting present timeline and past timelines, and it's just wild and crazy, but also while she's trying to figure out what happened, she's kind of getting slightly lured back in. It's just wild. Like, bravo. Woo, it's a little bit of pressure because now we're in the top 5. This one is another one that I recently read. Again, it is a romance. I'm trying to learn what I like and don't like in romances, and this one was so good that I went ahead and bought the entire series. I don't have the book with me because a friend is borrowing it and she just finished it and said she sobbed her eyes out. But this one is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I have read a few other books by this author, but never anything that was just strictly romance. But this one was so good. It was very touching. Like, I loved the romance, but I also loved the story of Calla and her father. This one's about a woman named Calla. She kind of grew up in like a richy family, but like her mom and her stepdad kind of basically paid for everything. But now she gets a call saying that her real dad, who lives in Alaska, who owns like a charter company, basically he is sick and she needs to come visit him. And she's never had a great relationship with her dad. She never really got to see him growing up and yada yada yada. So she goes to Alaska and tries to reconnect with her father, but also her father's friend slash co-worker, Jonah, you know, is in the picture. And it's one of those like hate to loves, but like in like the best way. I absolutely love this book. And again, I went out and bought the rest of the books in the series. With winter coming, I definitely plan on reading more of the series, so definitely check that out in the near future. But this one was just so good because it had the right amount of spice that I typically like. It was very cute banter back and forth and like pranks, and like I loved the setting of Alaska. I definitely want to go there one day in my lifetime. So yeah, definitely a great winter escapism read, and I learned a lot about like flying in Alaska, surprisingly. All right, this one just barely made it past The Simple Wild, and I don't know, honestly these two were so neck and neck, but I feel like I like this one just a hair bit more. But it is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I love everything Emily Henry has put out so far. I've read Beach Read, People We Meet on Vacation. I know she has a little bit more of a backlist, but nothing that has to do with like adult romance. She's definitely one of my favorite romance authors, and I definitely love this one. And I have the worst time explaining this book because I feel like this book has multiple different synopsises. This one follows Nora, who is a literary agent. She's very workaholic type of person, and basically her sister, who's pregnant, wants to take a trip down to Sunshine Falls, North Carolina, which is the place that her favorite book, her and her sister love this book so much. It's actually the place that inspired one of their favorite books. So they take this trip, and she kind of has a run-in with someone that she knows from the literary world up there, and it's just a cute like banter back and forth. I loved the small town vibes, the people in the small town. I loved the relationship between our character and her sister, the romance in here. It was a little spicy, which I liked. It was like the perfect amount. So I really enjoyed this one. So it made number 4. The next book I want to talk about is actually book 1 in a series, and it is The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. I discovered this author and I love everything she has written, and this one has a special place in my heart because this is about a woman who basically is preparing herself to never have kids. And that is something that I face with infertility. Like, it's just always been known that I will never have kids, and which is totally fine. I've learned to accept it. My husband and I have learned to accept it. But this one, I really enjoyed a little bit of that representation. This is about Kristen, who has a boyfriend who's in the military. He's preparing to come home, but they have like this weird relationship where you know from the beginning like they're not gonna make it, you know what I mean? But basically she meets this guy, they become really good friends because he's friends with other friends of hers, and basically it's like this friends to lovers, but like there's a lot of sexual chemistry while she's still with this other guy. I know some people don't like cheating in this one. I don't feel like there is technically cheating in this one, but like this book is just so good. But the dilemma is that Josh, who is the love interest, wants a big family, wants a lot of kids. So that's what's holding her back from committing to him a lot. And I loved this one so good. The writing style of this author is just amazing, and I definitely feel like if you like other books by her, you should definitely check this one out, or anything else she has written. All right, the number 2, which, oh, this is so nerve-wracking, but number 2 is technically horror, I guess you can say, on Goodreads, just based on the Choice Awards, but I feel like this is more of a thriller in my opinion. But it is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rakulak, and I loved this one. If you like Riley Sager's writing, I feel like you would really enjoy this one. Plus it also has pictures inside the book, so I feel like that really added a whole new element to this book. This one has a little bit of a paranormal twist to it, which again, I typically don't like in books. However, this one like did it for me. And again, the writing style is really good. I'm really looking forward to seeing what else this author puts out. This one is about a struggling woman who's coming out of like basically an addiction, and she gets placed with this job to be this like summer nanny, and she gets to have her own like guest house where she can live in, and she's taking care of this 5-year-old boy over the summer. And it's so cute because like I really loved the kid in this one. It was so cute to get to read about him. However, the kid likes to draw a lot, and he draws his imaginary friend, and crazy things start happening. Like this might actually be more than just an imaginary friend. So I really liked this one, and I feel like you should pick it up if you haven't already. And I believe this one won the horror genre on Goodreads, so definitely pick this one out. This is my number 2. And lastly, if you have not heard me shout this from the rooftops, this is my favorite book of the year. And it like, I just love this book so much, but it is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Yes, I've already mentioned another book by this author, but this one was just so good. And honestly, I think this is the book that ignited my new love for romance books. So I've read romance in the past, but this one just really opened my eyes, or made me part of the world of romance. I don't know, that was kind of cheesy. This one I just absolutely love. There's a little bit of an age gap between our love interests, where the woman's a little bit older, but she's from the city, he's from the country. Their worlds just don't mesh up, but they just want to be together so freaking bad. And it is so cute. I absolutely loved this book so much. I have talked about this numerous times, but this one was just so good. It made my heart like just so freaking happy. I loved this one. I read the sequel also. It did not make the list, unfortunately. It actually doesn't come out until next year, so I felt like that was also another reason why I didn't put it on the list. But I did read the NetGalley arc, and it's called Yours Truly, which comes out I think in April or May. But that one follows another side character. But I just loved the love between this one. I laughed, I cried, I was just so freaking excited to read this book, and I really want to reread it, honestly, but there's so many books. But yeah, number 1 favorite book of the year. All right guys, that is my top 10 favorite books that I've read this year. Let me know in the comments what your favorite book was down below. Also, let me know if we have any other similar reading taste down in the comments. Those are my top 10 favorite books of the year. I'm really looking forward to 2023, especially now that I have more genres that I'm loving. Hopefully I have some really good ones and a lot of 5-star reads. So I'm going to end this video now. Make sure you subscribe and follow me and hit that thumbs up and all that jazz. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave a star emoji down in the comments. But until next time, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Let's go outside, the snow is falling down and every child is having so much fun. The snowman is twice the size as me with a smile as quirky as mine.